Commander Dae-jung stood at the observation window of Mars Station, his coffee growing cold in his hand. The red planet stretched below him, but his eyes were fixed on the distant moon of Titan. He had been watching the mining colony for the past hour, waiting for the regular status update. It was 3 minutes late now. The communication panel behind him suddenly erupted with static and screams. Dae-jung dropped his cup and ran to the console. The holographic display showed Titan, but something was wrong. Massive ships surrounded the small moon. Ships unlike anything humanity had ever built. They were dark and angular, covered in sharp edges that seemed to cut through space itself. "This is Titan Colony to any listening station," a panicked voice crackled through the speakers. "We are under attack. Unknown vessels are firing on our habitats. They came out of nowhere. We need help. We need..." Under 7. The transmission ended in a burst of white noise. Dae-jung's hands flew across the controls, trying to re-establish contact. Nothing. He switched to the visual feed from the colony's external cameras. What he saw made his blood run cold. The alien ships were methodically destroying every structure on Titan's surface. Bright beams of energy cut through domes and towers like a hot knife through butter. 3,000 people lived on that moon. In less than 5 minutes, they were all gone. Dae-jung activated the emergency alert system. Alarms blared throughout Mars Station. Within minutes, every human outpost in the solar system knew that humanity was no longer alone in the universe. And their first contact was not peaceful. On Earth, in the city of Geneva, Ambassador G1 received the emergency call in the middle of the night. She dressed quickly and rushed to the United Earth Assembly building. The massive chamber was already filled with representatives from every nation. Holographic displays showed the destruction of Titan on every wall. The room was silent, except for the sound of quiet sobbing. President Hyun-soo entered the chamber, his face grave. He was a tall man, with silver hair and tired eyes. He had led Earth through economic crisis and climate disasters, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. He took his place at the central podium and activated the main display. 20 minutes ago, he began, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. An alien fleet attacked our colony on Titan. All 3,000 colonists are dead. The attack was unprovoked. We sent no warnings, no challenges. The chamber erupted in frightened voices. G1 raised her hand for silence. "Mr. President, have we received any communication from these attackers?" As if in answer, the main display flickered and changed. A face appeared on the screen, reptilian and cold. Its scales were dark green, and its eyes were yellow with vertical slits. When it spoke, a computer translated its words into various human languages. "Primitive creatures of Earth," the alien said, its voice harsh and grating. "I am High Commander Threxus, of the Velkari Empire. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military assets immediately. You will provide a complete census of your population. You will prepare to receive our occupation forces. You have 1 rotation of your planet to comply. Resistance will result in the cleansing of your world. We have conquered 47 star systems. You are the 48th. Do not make this difficult." The transmission ended. The chamber exploded in chaos. Some representatives shouted for immediate surrender. Others called for mobilizing every weapon Earth possessed. Military Chief Tae-young stood, his uniform crisp, despite the early hour. "Mr. President, we must be realistic," Tae-young said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Our fleet consists of 12 warships. They were designed for asteroid defense and exploration, not combat. The Velkari Armada has over 300 vessels. We saw what they did to Titan. If we resist, they will do the same to Earth. We must surrender to save lives." G1 studied the frozen image of Threxus on the screen. Something about the alien's demeanor bothered her. She had spent her career reading people, understanding motivations and hidden meanings. She pulled up the translation data from the Velkari message and analyzed it carefully. "Mr. President," she said slowly. "May I speak?" Hyun-soo nodded. The chamber quieted. "I've reviewed the Valkyrie transmission," Ji-won continued. "Their language patterns suggest something interesting. They said they've conquered 47 systems. They gave us 24 hours to surrender. But nowhere in their message did they mention a battle. They didn't say they defeated 47 civilizations in combat. They said they conquered them. I believe every species they encountered surrendered without fighting." Taeyang frowned. "What difference does that make? They're still overwhelming us in numbers and technology." "It makes all the difference," Ji-won replied. "They're not expecting resistance. Look at the footage from Titan. They destroyed the colony methodically, almost casually. They've never had to fight a real war. They've only had to intimidate primitive species into submission. The question is, what happens when a species fights back?" President Hyun-soo leaned forward, his eyes thoughtful. "Are you suggesting we resist?" "I'm suggesting we don't kneel without even trying," Ji-won said. "Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and disasters that should have destroyed us. We're still here because we don't give up easily. If we surrender now, we're accepting slavery without even knowing if we could have won." The chamber erupted again, but this time with a different energy. Representatives argued passionately on both sides. Taeyang presented casualty estimates. Others talked about human dignity and freedom. The debate raged for hours. Finally, President Hyun-soo raised his hand for silence. The chamber fell quiet, waiting for his decision. Every person there knew that the next words would determine humanity's fate. "We will not surrender," Hyun-soo said firmly. "But we will be smart about this. We cannot face the Valkyrie in open battle. Not yet. We need time, and we need knowledge. I'm ordering the immediate evacuation of all outer colonies. Every civilian is to return to Earth or Mars. Our warships will cover the evacuation." He turned to Daejung's image on one of the displays. "Commander, you will take our fastest ship, the Indomitable, and select the best engineers and scientists we have. Your mission is to get as far from Earth as possible. Study the Valkyrie. Find their weaknesses. Stay alive. We're going to need you." End quote. End quote. Da-Jung saluted. "Understood, Mr. President." Hyun-soo then addressed Taeyang. "General, prepare Earth's defenses. I know we can't win a conventional battle, but we can make them pay for every inch they take. Prepare evacuation shelters. Arm the population. If they want Earth, they'll have to fight for it." Finally, he looked directly at the cameras that would broadcast his message across human space. "To every human, wherever you are, hear this. The Valkyrie expect us to kneel. They think we're primitives who will accept chains without resistance. They're wrong. We're going to teach them why humanity survived every threat it ever faced. We don't break. We don't surrender. And we sure as hell don't kneel to anyone." The transmission ended, and Hyun-soo's words echoed across Earth and her colonies. In homes and stations, bars and ships, humans heard the message. Some cried. Some prayed. But most felt something stirring in their chests, something ancient and fierce. Humanity had been challenged, and humanity was going to answer. In orbit above Earth, the first Valkyrie ships began to arrive. Their dark hulls blotted out the stars. Commander Threxus looked down at the blue planet and smiled his reptilian smile. Another easy conquest. Another primitive species to add to the empire. He had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake in Valkyrie history. The war for Earth had begun. 3 months had passed since the Valkyrie invaded Earth. The cities that once gleamed with lights and life now lay in ruins. Seoul was a shadow of its former self. Broken buildings reached toward the sky like broken teeth. Smoke rose from fires that had burned for weeks. In the streets, Valkyrie soldiers patrolled in their powered armor, their weapons always ready. But beneath the ruins, in the old subway tunnels and maintenance corridors, humanity refused to die. Sang-hee crouched in the darkness of an abandoned tunnel, her breathing slow and controlled. Before the invasion, she had been a detective, solving crimes and catching criminals. Now she was a fighter, leading one of the largest resistance cells in Seoul. Her team of 20 waited behind her, armed with whatever weapons they could steal or build. "The patrol passes this junction every 2 hours," whispered Dong-hyun, a former engineer who now served as her second-in-command. "They're always exactly on time. Valkyrie love their schedules." Sang-hee nodded. The aliens were predictable, almost mechanical in their routines. It was one of their weaknesses. She checked her watch. 30 seconds. She raised her hand, and her team tensed, ready to strike. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the tunnel. 4 Valkyrie soldiers appeared, their weapons scanning the darkness. They never saw the resistance fighters until it was too late. Sang-hee gave the signal, and her team attacked from all sides. The battle lasted less than a minute. When it was over, 4 aliens lay dead, and humanity had 4 more weapons. "Take everything," Sang-hee ordered. "Weapons, armor, communication devices. Leave nothing behind." As her team worked, she heard a noise from deeper in the tunnel. She spun, raising her stolen Valkyrie rifle, but relaxed when she saw a young woman emerge from the shadows. It was Minji, a 17-year-old hacker who had become invaluable to the resistance. "I found something," Minji said, her eyes bright with excitement. She held up a small device that looked like a damaged communication relay. "I pulled this from an abandoned Valkyrie outpost. It's got access codes to their satellite network." Sang-hee's eyes widened. "Can you use it?" "Already did," Minji grinned. "I've been hiding messages in cosmic radiation patterns. The Valkyrie monitor everything, but they think radiation is just random noise. I've made contact with 12 other resistance cells across the planet." For the first time in months, Sang-hee felt hope stirring in her chest. Far above Earth's surface, in the processing center that the Valkyrie had built over the ruins of Geneva, Ambassador Ji-won sat in a detention cell. The room was small and cold, with walls that glowed with alien technology. She had been held here since the invasion, along with dozens of other government officials. The Valkyrie kept them alive as examples, proof that humanity's leadership had failed. But Ji-won had not been idle. She listened. She watched. She learned everything she could about her captors. The door to her cell slid open, and Commander Threxus entered. The Valkyrie leader was even more imposing in person than on the view screen. His scales gleamed under the harsh lights, and his yellow eyes studied her with cold intelligence. "Ambassador," he said in surprisingly good Korean. The Valkyrie had learned human languages quickly. "You continue to resist. Why? Your planet is conquered. Your military is destroyed. Your people die every day. Why not accept the inevitable?" Ji-won looked up at him calmly. "Because we're human. We don't accept inevitability. We fight it." Threxus hissed, a sound that might have been laughter. "You fight when you cannot win. This is illogical. Every other species we conquered understood when resistance was futile. Why are humans different?" "Because every other species you conquered was peaceful," Ji-won replied. "You've been picking on civilizations that never developed weapons of mass destruction, species that solved their problems with diplomacy instead of war. But humans? We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We know war. We're good at it. And we're really good at spite." "Spite?" Threxus tilted his head, confused. "Fighting even when we know we'll lose," Ji-won explained. "Fighting because you're here, and we don't want you here. Fighting because surrendering would mean we're weak, and humans hate looking weak. We'll burn our own cities before we let you have them peacefully." Threxus was silent for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Ji-won smiled. She had seen something in his eyes. Something the Valkyrie hadn't felt in a very long time. Doubt, far from Earth, in the cold darkness of the asteroid belt. Commander Dae-jung, floated in zero gravity, inside the Indomitable's engineering bay. Chief Engineer Bo-Ra worked beside him, her tools floating around her as she modified the ship's weapon systems. "I think I've got it," Bo-Ra said, her voice excited. The Valkyrie shields rotate through different frequencies every few seconds. It's how they coordinate their fleets. All their ships sync up to the same pattern. But that means if we can predict the pattern, we can time our attacks to hit when the shield is transitioning between frequencies, for just a microsecond. They're vulnerable. Dae-jung grabbed a handhold and pulled himself closer to examine her work. How accurate does the timing need to be? Extremely accurate, Bo-Ra admitted. We're talking about microsecond precision, but our computers can handle it. The problem is, we only get one shot before they adapt. Maybe two, if we're lucky. Jin-ho, the weapons officer, floated up to join them. He had been a quiet man before the war, a mathematician who calculated orbital trajectories. Now he calculated death. "I can make the shot. But we need to test it. We need a target." Dae-jung pulled up the tactical display. Red dots showed Valkyrie positions throughout the solar system. One cluster caught his eye. There, a supply convoy heading to Jupiter. 3 cruisers escorting cargo ships. If we can take them out, we prove the theory works. And we send a message to the Valkyrie. Humanity isn't done fighting. Bo-Ra grinned. "When do we leave?" "As soon as you finish those modifications," Dae-jung replied. "We've been hiding for 3 months. It's time to bite back." 2 days later, the Indomitable drifted silently in Jupiter's shadow. The Valkyrie convoy approached, confident and unafraid. Why would they fear a single human ship? Their technology was superior. Their shields were impenetrable. "Convoy in range," Jin-ho reported, his voice calm despite the sweat on his forehead. "Syncing weapons to shield frequency pattern. Calculating firing solution." Dae-jung watched the tactical display. The 3 Valkyrie cruisers were massive compared to his ship. One good hit from any of them would destroy the Indomitable. But Bo-Ra's modifications gave them a chance. One chance. "Fire when ready," Dae-jung ordered. Jin-ho's fingers danced across his controls. The ship's railgun, modified to fire at precisely calculated intervals, spat out a stream of metal slugs. Each one was aimed at a different cruiser, timed to arrive exactly when the shields transitioned frequencies. The first cruiser exploded in a brilliant flash, then the second. The third managed to raise an alarm before Jin-ho's final shot tore through its engine core. 3 Valkyrie warships destroyed in less than 10 seconds. The crew of the Indomitable sat in stunned silence. Then, someone cheered. Then, everyone cheered. Bo-Ra hugged Jin-ho. Dae-jung allowed himself a small smile. "Record everything," he ordered. "Every detail of the attack. Then transmit it to every resistance cell on Earth. Humanity needs to know we can hurt them." And the message spread quickly through Minji's hidden network. In tunnels beneath Seoul, Sang-hee received the transmission and shared it with her fighters. In the detention center above Geneva, Ji-won heard whispers of the Jupiter ambush from the guards. Across Earth, in every city and shelter, humans learned that the impossible had happened. A single human ship had destroyed 3 Valkyrie cruisers. Commander Threxus also received the report. He stood in his command center, staring at the tactical display that showed the burning wrecks of his ships. Around him, his officers waited nervously for his response. "How?" Threxus demanded. "How did one primitive ship destroy 3 of our cruisers?" His intelligence officer stepped forward. "They exploited the shield frequency transition. A known vulnerability, but one that requires microsecond timing. No species has ever been able to achieve the necessary precision. Until now." Threxus slammed his clawed hand on the console. "Then the humans are more advanced than we thought. This changes nothing. Increase security on all supply lines. Double the patrols. and begin the systematic elimination of all resistance cells on Earth. We will break them through attrition. But even as he gave the orders, Threxus felt that unfamiliar sensation again. Doubt. The humans were learning, adapting, fighting back in ways the Valkyrie had never encountered. For 300 years, the Valkyrie Empire had conquered without real opposition. They had forgotten what it meant to fight an enemy that refused to accept defeat. On Earth, in her detention cell, Ji-won smiled as she listened to the guards' nervous conversations. The balance was shifting. Slowly, painfully, but shifting nonetheless. Humanity had learned to hurt the Valkyrie. Soon, they would learn to kill them. And eventually, they would learn to win. Dr. Sumin worked in silence, her hands steady as she prepared the samples. The Valkyrie medical facility where she was forced to work was cold and sterile, lit by harsh blue lights that hurt her eyes. Around her, other human doctors and scientists worked under armed guard, treating wounded Valkyrie soldiers and studying alien biology. But Sumin had a secret. For the past month, she had been collecting samples of Valkyrie blood and tissue. She had analyzed their immune systems, their cellular structure, their weaknesses, and she had found something interesting. The Valkyrie had conquered 47 worlds, but they had never adapted to the diseases of those worlds. They relied entirely on their medical technology to keep them safe. She had created a virus. Nothing lethal, because she was still a doctor, and she had taken an oath to do no harm. But this virus would make the Valkyrie very, very sick. It would spread quickly through their biological containment systems, and it would remind them that humans were not as primitive as they thought. Sumin uploaded the virus into the facility's air recycling system. Within hours, Valkyrie soldiers throughout the base began showing symptoms: fever, weakness, respiratory distress. Nothing fatal, but enough to incapacitate them. The facility went into lockdown, but the virus had already spread to other bases through shared equipment and rotating personnel. Within a week, thousands of Valkyrie soldiers were sick. Their advanced technology could cure the virus, but it took time. And while they were weak, the resistance struck. Sang-hee received the message from Minji's network. The Valkyrie base in central Seoul was operating with half its normal guards. Most of the soldiers there were recovering from the mystery illness. It was the perfect time to strike. She gathered her best fighters, 50 men and women, armed with stolen Valkyrie weapons and carrying homemade explosives. They moved through the tunnels like ghosts, using routes they had mapped over months of careful exploration. The Seoul Command Center was a massive structure built on the ruins of the old government district. It controlled all Valkyrie operations in Asia. It was heavily defended, with automated turrets and energy shields. But Sang-hee had something the Valkyrie didn't expect. She had the frequency data that Dae-jung had transmitted from the Jupiter ambush. Bora sent updated calculations, Dong-hyun whispered, holding up a tablet. The shields cycle every 3.7 seconds. We plant the explosives, then we trigger them all at exactly the same microsecond. The blast will punch through during the transition. Sang-hee nodded. Her team moved into position, placing charges at key structural points around the base. Each explosive was linked to a central timer. They had one chance to get this right. She checked her watch. Everyone in position? Acknowledgements came through her earpiece. The explosions tore through the command center simultaneously. The shields flickered and failed. Secondary explosions erupted as the base's power systems overloaded. The entire structure collapsed in on itself, sending a pillar of smoke into the night sky. Sang-hee and her team were already running, disappearing into the tunnels before the Valkyrie could respond. Behind them, the ruins of the command center burned. All Valkyrie communications across Asia went dark. In the asteroid belt, Commander Dae-jung watched the reports flood in from Earth. The Seoul attack was not an isolated incident. Resistant cells across the planet were using the frequency data to strike at Valkyrie installations. Hong Kong, Mumbai, Cairo, Sao Paulo, Lagos. Cities around the world erupted in coordinated attacks. But Daejung's attention was focused on something else. Over the past weeks, other human ships had found him in the outer system. Warships that had escaped the initial invasion. Cargo haulers converted into makeshift combat vessels. Mining ships armed with industrial lasers. One by one, they had made their way to his position. Captain Dong-woo commanded a military corvette, the Defiant. Captain Hae-won flew a converted freighter she had renamed Freedom's Price. Captain Young-sik piloted a mining vessel bristling with improvised weapons he called the Vengeance. Dozens more ships had joined them, each one carrying a crew that refused to surrender. "We have 47 ships now," Jinho reported, updating the tactical display. "Not much against the Valkyrie fleet, but more than we had." Daejung studied the display. 47 ships. The same number of worlds the Valkyrie had conquered. He wondered if that was coincidence or fate. "We can't hide forever," Dong-woo said. The older captain floated beside Daejung, his face scarred from a Valkyrie attack on his previous ship. "The resistance on Earth is fighting back. They need our support." "I know," Daejung replied. "But we're still badly outnumbered. We need to choose our battles carefully. We need to make every shot count." "Then let's make a shot that really counts," Hae-won suggested. She pulled up a new display. Valkyrie intelligence just transmitted fleet positions. They're gathering ships at Mars. Big gathering. Maybe 100 vessels. "Why Mars?" Bora asked. "Because they think that's where we're hiding," Jinho said slowly, realization dawning. "They tracked our transmissions. They know we're in the outer system. They're going to destroy Mars Station and everyone on it." Daejung's jaw tightened. 10,000 people still lived on Mars. Mostly families and civilians who had nowhere else to go. He couldn't let the Valkyrie destroy them. "We're going to Mars," he announced. "All ships. We're going to fight." Young-sik grinned fiercely. "Finally. I've been waiting months to hurt these monsters." The human fleet jumped to Mars 3 days later. They arrived to find the Valkyrie armada already in orbit, preparing to bombard the surface. Commander Threxus himself led the fleet, determined to crush this pocket of resistance once and for all. Daejung's 47 ships against Threxus's 100. It should have been a massacre. And it was. Just not the massacre Threxus expected. "All ships," Daejung transmitted. "Guerrilla tactics. Hit and run. Don't engage directly. Use the debris field. Use the planet. Make them chase us." The human fleet scattered, diving toward Mars's surface. The Valkyrie fleet pursued, confident in their superior numbers. They didn't realize they had just entered a trap. The debris field around Mars was thick with the wreckage of mining operations and destroyed satellites. The human ships knew every piece of debris, every hiding spot. They used the cover to ambush Valkyrie vessels, firing their precisely timed shots and then disappearing before the aliens could respond. Dong-woo's Defiant destroyed a Valkyrie destroyer by luring it into a cloud of metallic debris that disrupted its shields. Hae-won's Freedom's Price rammed a Valkyrie cruiser from behind, her ship's reinforced cargo hull tearing through the alien vessel's engine. Young-sik lived up to his ship's name, using his mining lasers to cut through 3 Valkyrie fighters in quick succession. But the battle was costly. The Valkyrie adapted quickly, coordinating their attacks and using their superior firepower. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Brave crews died buying seconds for their comrades to escape. Eun-ji, a young pilot flying a converted courier ship, saw a Valkyrie battleship targeting the Indomitable. Without hesitation, she pushed her engines to maximum and rammed her ship into the battleship's command deck. The explosion knocked the battleship out of the battle and saved Daejung's life. But Eun-ji was gone. "All ships, fall back," Daejung ordered, his voice heavy with grief. They had fought for 6 hours. They had destroyed 15 Valkyrie ships, but they had lost 23 of their own. Half their fleet was gone. The surviving ships retreated deep into the asteroid belt, pursued by angry Velkari vessels. They had proven that humans could fight the Velkari in space and hurt them badly. On Earth, news of the Battle of Mars spread through the resistance networks. Sanghee's fighters cheered when they heard about the victory. Sumin felt tears on her cheeks as she listened to the casualty reports, mourning the brave souls who had died. Even Jiwon, locked in her cell, allowed herself a moment of pride, but it was Commander Threxus who truly understood what had happened. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed his damaged fleet. 15 ships destroyed, 30 more damaged. Against 47 primitive human vessels, his intelligence officer approached cautiously. "Commander, the humans used debris fields and ambush tactics. They refused direct engagement. This is not how civilized species fight." "No," Threxus agreed quietly. "It's how predators hunt. We thought the humans were prey, but they're not. They're hunters, and we just stepped into their territory." For the first time since the invasion began, Threxus felt something he had never experienced in his long military career. He felt fear. Not fear of death, but fear of defeat. The humans were learning too quickly, adapting too well, fighting too fiercely. The Velkari High Council would demand answers. They would demand victory. But Threxus no longer knew if victory was possible. The humans had shown they could strike back, and every day they grew stronger, while his forces grew weaker. The tide of the war was turning. Slowly, painfully, bought with human blood and sacrifice, but turning nonetheless. And once a tide begins to turn, it's very hard to stop. President Hyun-soo emerged from the bunker complex deep beneath the Himalayan mountains. He had been hiding there for 6 months, coordinating the resistance while the Velkari hunted for him. Now he stood in the cold mountain air, looking down at the valley where his command staff had gathered. The Velkari controlled Earth's surface, but they didn't control humanity's spirit. And Hyun-soo had a plan that could change everything. Ambassador Jiwon stood beside him. Freed just days ago, in a daring raid by Sanghee's resistance fighters. She looked thinner than before, her clothes worn and dirty, but her eyes burned with determination. "Tell me about the Mirathi," Hyun-soo said. Jiwon pulled up a holographic display on a stolen Velkari tablet. "The Mirathi are an aquatic species. The Velkari conquered their world 20 years ago. I met their ambassador, Kira, in the detention center. She told me that 6 other conquered species are ready to rebel. But they need proof that resistance can succeed. They need to see the Velkari can be beaten." "The Battle of Mars wasn't enough?" Hyun-soo asked. "It was a defensive victory," Jiwon explained. "We survived. We hurt them. But we didn't win. These species need to see humans go on the offensive. They need to see us take the fight to the Velkari and win decisively." Hyun-soo nodded slowly. He looked at the tactical display, showing Velkari positions throughout human space. Then, he zoomed out, showing the entire Velkari Empire. 47 conquered systems, held by fleets spread thin across hundreds of light-years. "Their empire is overextended," he said. "They conquered too fast, too easily. They never had to maintain a long war. If we can strike at their infrastructure, cut their supply lines, we might be able to break their hold on Earth." "I recommend the shipyard at Proxima Centauri," said a voice from behind them. Commander Daejung walked up the mountain path, his uniform torn and stained. He had just arrived from the outer system. The Proxima shipyard builds all their replacement vessels. Destroy it, and they can't replace their losses. It would cripple their strategic reserve. "How many ships defend it?" Hyun-soo asked. 30, Daejung replied. "And we have 24 ships left after Mars. The odds are bad." "The odds are always bad," Hyun-soo said with a grim smile. "But if we succeed, We prove to the entire galaxy that the Valkyrie can be beaten. And then the Empire falls apart. He looked at each of them in turn. This is our moment. We strike at Proxima. We destroy their shipyard. And then we take back Earth. Are you with me? They all nodded. There was no hesitation. 2 weeks later, the human fleet jumped into the Proxima Centauri system. The massive shipyard hung in orbit around the star, a sprawling complex of construction docks and assembly platforms. 30 Valkyrie warships patrolled around it, their weapons ready. This is it, Daejung said to his fleet. Remember, we're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to win. Use every trick we've learned. Hit them where it hurts. Bo-Ra had upgraded every ship with improved shield frequency disruptors. Jin-Ho had calculated optimal firing solutions for each vessel. They were as ready as they would ever be. The Valkyrie detected them immediately. The patrol fleet moved to intercept, confident in their superior numbers. They had learned to respect human tactics after Mars, but they still believed in their technological advantage. The battle was chaos from the first moment. Human ships dove and weaved through space, firing precisely timed shots that punched through Valkyrie shields. The aliens tried to coordinate their attacks, but the humans refused to fight predictably. Captain Youngsik took his mining ship, Vengeance, straight at the shipyard's main construction dock. Valkyrie fire tore at his shields, but he didn't stop. His ship was already dying, systems failing one by one, but he had enough power for one last action. For Earth, he transmitted. For everyone we've lost. The Vengeance rammed into the construction dock at full speed. The explosion was massive, tearing through the dock and setting off a chain reaction that destroyed half the shipyard. Youngsik died instantly, but his sacrifice crippled the Valkyrie's ability to build new ships. Captain Hae-Won saw an opportunity. With the main dock destroyed, the shipyard's defensive systems were offline. She led a squadron of 5 ships straight into the heart of the complex, firing at the assembly platforms and fuel storage tanks. More explosions erupted, each one destroying years of Valkyrie construction effort. Daejung's Indomitable dueled with the Valkyrie flagship, the 2 ships circling each other like ancient sea vessels. Jin-Ho fired again and again, each shot precisely calculated. Slowly, they wore down the alien ship's shields. Finally, a shot penetrated and struck the flagship's reactor core. The Valkyrie ship exploded in a brilliant flash. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the shipyard was destroyed, and only 8 human ships remained operational. 16 brave crews had given their lives, but they had achieved the impossible. They had struck deep into Valkyrie territory and dealt a devastating blow. Back on Earth, the news of Proxima spread like wildfire through the resistance networks. In Seoul, Sang-hee gathered her fighters and showed them the footage of the battle. This is proof, she told them. Proof that we can win. Tonight, we take back our city. Across the planet, resistance cells prepared for coordinated attacks. Sumin had created a new weapon, a modified version of her earlier virus. This one specifically targeted Valkyrie respiratory systems, forcing the aliens to wear sealed suits or retreat to protected environments. Minji's network coordinated the timing. Every resistance cell, every fighter, every citizen who still had the strength to resist, they all received the signal at the same moment. It was time to take back Earth. The uprising began at midnight. In Seoul, Sang-hee led her fighters against the Valkyrie occupation headquarters. Using the frequency data and timing their attacks perfectly, they destroyed the building's shield generators and stormed inside. The battle was brutal in close quarters. But the resistance fighters knew the building's layout better than their occupiers. In Mumbai, resistance forces attacked the Valkyrie supply depot, destroying fuel and ammunition. In Lagos, fighters sabotaged the alien communication network. In Sao Paulo, citizens rose up and drove the Valkyrie out of the city center. Around the world, humanity struck back with fury and determination. Su-min released her respiratory virus through the planet's atmosphere. Within hours, Velkari soldiers across Earth began experiencing breathing difficulties. They had to retreat to sealed bases or wear cumbersome environmental suits. Their efficiency dropped dramatically. Commander Threxus watched the reports flood in from his flagship in orbit. The situation on Earth was deteriorating rapidly. The Proxima shipyard was gone. His fleet had no reinforcements coming, and now the entire planet was in rebellion. "Commander, we should withdraw," his second officer suggested. "We can't hold Earth without reinforcements. If we stay, we'll lose the entire occupation force." Threxus wanted to refuse. He wanted to bomb the planet into submission, to show these primitive humans what happened when you defied the Velkari Empire. But he was a practical soldier. He knew when a position was lost. "Begin evacuation," he ordered. "But make them pay. Bombard the major population centers as we leave. Kill as many as we can." The Vasa, Ponix, the Velkari fleet began withdrawing from Earth's surface, but not before launching devastating attacks on cities around the world. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, orbital strikes rained down, killing millions. The Velkari wanted to teach humanity a final lesson about the cost of resistance. But Captain Dongwu and the surviving ships of Daejung's fleet were ready. They had jumped back to Earth immediately after Proxima. Now they intercepted the Velkari fleet as it tried to bombard the planet. The final battle for Earth lasted 6 hours. The human ships were outnumbered and outgunned. Many more brave souls died, but they kept the Velkari busy, preventing them from completely destroying Earth's cities. And slowly, painfully, they won. Dongwu's Defiant finally got a clear shot at Threxus's flagship. Jinho, coordinating from the Indomitable, calculated the firing solution. The shot was perfect. It struck the flagship's command deck, killing Threxus instantly and throwing the Velkari fleet into chaos. Without their commander, the Velkari ships panicked. Some tried to fight. Others fled into deep space. The few that surrendered were taken prisoner. By the time the sun rose over Earth, the skies were clear of enemy vessels for the first time in 6 months. On the streets of Seoul, Sang-hee stood among the ruins and looked up at the dawn sky. Around her, her fighters cheered and cried and embraced each other. They had won. Against all odds, despite all the losses, they had taken back their world. President Hyun-soo broadcast from the Himalayan bunker. His face appeared on every surviving screen around the planet. "People of Earth," he said, his voice strong despite the exhaustion in his eyes. "We are free. We have paid a terrible price. 2 billion of our brothers and sisters are dead. Our cities are ruins. But we stand unbroken. We have shown the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Now, it's time to make sure they never threaten us again." In space, Daejung looked down at Earth and allowed himself to smile. They had won the defensive war. Now it was time to go on the offensive. The Velkari Empire had started this war. Humanity was going to finish it. The ruins of the United Nations building in Geneva stood as a monument to everything humanity had lost. 2 billion dead. Entire cities reduced to rubble. Families torn apart. Children who would never know their parents. The cost of freedom had been almost too high to bear. Almost. President Hyun-soo stood in those ruins, broadcasting to the entire solar system. Around him, representatives from every surviving nation had gathered. Behind them, the flags of Earth's countries flew together, united as never before. "We mourn," Hyun-soo said, his voice carrying across the planet. "We weep for those we've lost. But we do not break." The Velkari thought we were weak because we were young among the stars. They forgot that the young are also the most dangerous. The young are the ones with everything to prove. We've shown the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity's survival. Now we show them what happens next. In orbit, Admiral Daejung commanded a fleet unlike anything humanity had built before. The surviving ships from the war had been joined by new vessels, built in secret shipyards during the occupation. Engineers like Bora had studied captured Velkari technology and merged it with human designs. The result was ships that combined the best of both species. Faster, stronger, deadlier. But more importantly, 6 other species had joined humanity's fleet. The Mirathi brought their aquatic combat vessels. The Torim contributed their advanced sensor technology. The Kelix provided medical support. Species that had suffered under Velkari rule for decades now stood with humanity, ready to take back their freedom. Ambassador G1 had spent months negotiating with these species, building the alliance that would challenge the Velkari Empire. She stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, looking at the tactical display that showed over 400 ships. 40 had grown to 400. It was time to carry the war to the enemy. All ships ready, Daejung reported. We've plotted a course into Velkari space. Our first target is the mining system of Kelax 7. It supplies raw materials for their entire fleet. Without it, we've seen.com, all be stum. They can't build new ships or repair damaged ones. Then we take it, Hyun-soo said simply. Let them know we're coming. Let them be afraid. The fleet jumped into Velkari space. System by system, they advanced. The Velkari had regrouped after losing Earth, but they were unprepared for the ferocity of humanity's counterattack. Human commanders had learned from every battle. They knew Velkari tactics. They knew their weaknesses, and they exploited them ruthlessly. At Kelax 7, Captain Dongwoo led the assault on the mining facilities. The Velkari garrison fought desperately, but they were overwhelmed by the combined human and alien fleet. Within a week, the system was secured, and the Velkari war machine lost its primary source of materials. But not all victories came through battle. Ji-won's diplomatic skills proved just as valuable as military might. She broadcast messages to every Velkari colony, offering terms of surrender. Lay down your weapons. Accept peace. You won't be enslaved or destroyed. You'll be allowed to go home. Many Velkari colonies took that offer. They had seen what happened when humans decided to fight. They had watched Earth turn from victim to victor. They had no desire to face humanity's wrath. In Seoul, Sang-hee worked with international teams to rebuild her city. The resistance fighters who had battled in the tunnels now helped dig through rubble, searching for survivors and salvaging what could be saved. Dr. Soo-min's medical skills were desperately needed as she treated wounded civilians and worked to cure diseases that had spread during the occupation. Young Min-ji, the hacker who had connected the resistance, now coordinated reconstruction efforts through her communication network. The same skills that had hidden messages from the Velkari now helped organize food distribution and medical care. The galaxy watched as humanity rebuilt and advanced simultaneously. They saw a species that refused to be broken, that could wage war and heal wounds at the same time. It was terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. 6 months after liberating Earth, the Alliance fleet reached the borders of the core Velkari systems. These were the heavily defended worlds where the Velkari leadership lived, the High Council that had ordered the conquest of 47 species, the commanders who had destroyed colonies without mercy. Admiral Daejung called a council of war. In the holographic conference room, captains from a dozen species gathered. Haewon was there, still commanding her battered freighter. Dongwoo represented the human military. Ji-won spoke for the diplomatic corps. Representatives from the allied species added their voices. The Velkari homeworld of Velkara Prime, Daejung said, highlighting it on the display. 200 warships defend it, the last of their fleet. If we defeat them, the war is over. They won't surrender easily, warned Kira, the Marathi ambassador. The High Council would rather die than admit defeat to species they viewed as inferior. Then we give them one chance, Ji-won said. One opportunity to end this without destroying their homeworld. If they refuse, we show them exactly what we're capable of. The Allied fleet jumped to Velkara Prime. 200 Velkari warships faced 400 Alliance vessels. But numbers alone didn't tell the story. The Valkyrie ships were older models, poorly maintained after months of war. The Alliance fleet had been built specifically to fight this battle. Dae-jung opened a communication channel to the Valkyrie High Council. On the screen appeared the face of Counselor Vex Nor, the leader who had ordered the invasion of Earth. Valkyrie High Council, Dae-jung said formally. You stand accused of unprovoked aggression against peaceful species. You've enslaved populations. You've destroyed worlds. You've killed billions. Surrender now, and you'll face trial. Continue fighting, and you'll face annihilation. Vex Nor's reptilian face twisted in contempt. You are insects. Primitives playing with weapons you barely understand. We built an empire that lasted 3 centuries. Do you really think you can defeat us? We will rebuild. We will return. And we will crush you. Dae-jung nodded slowly. He had expected that response. Jin-ho, show them. On the Indomitable, Jin-ho targeted a single weapon. It was something Su-min had helped design during the reconstruction. A kinetic impactor, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Not aimed at ships, not aimed at the planet. Aimed at an uninhabited moon, orbiting Velkara Prime. The impact was visible from the planet's surface. The moon, a lifeless rock that had orbited Velkara Prime for billions of years, shattered. Pieces broke apart and drifted into space, creating a spectacular and terrifying display of humanity's power. Dae-jung reopened the channel. That was an uninhabited moon. The next shot can target your homeworld. We don't want to destroy you. We want justice. Surrender now, or we demonstrate what we can do to a populated planet. You have 1 hour. The channel closed. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the crew waited. 1 hour to decide the fate of billions. 37 minutes later, the communication channel reopened. But it wasn't Vex Nor who appeared. It was Korval, the Valkyrie intelligence director. He looked tired and defeated. Admiral Dae-jung, Korval said quietly, I speak for a faction of the High Council that wishes to end this war. We offer unconditional surrender. We will disarm our fleet. To we came calm. Admiral Dae-jung, we will face trial for our crimes. We ask only that you spare our civilians. They are innocent of the Council's decisions. Dae-jung looked at Ji-won, who nodded. Surrender accepted, Dae-jung said. Order your fleet to stand down. Prepare to transfer custody of all High Council members. The people of Velkara Prime will not be harmed. You have my word. Dae-jung, 210 the Valkyrie fleet powered down its weapons. 200 warships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries now floated helpless in space. The Valkyrie Empire, which had conquered 47 systems, had fallen in 18 months. The treaty signing took place aboard the Indomitable. G1 represented the Alliance. Korval represented what remained of the Valkyrie government. The terms were clear and harsh. The Valkyrie would disarm completely. They would pay reparations to every species they had conquered. The High Council members would stand trial for war crimes. But the Valkyrie people would be allowed to live peacefully on their homeworld. More importantly, the treaty established the Galactic Accord, a coalition of free species dedicated to preventing future conquests. President Hyun-soo was elected the first Secretary General. The headquarters would be built on Earth, on the ruins of the old United Nations building, as a reminder of the cost of aggression. 5 years later, life had changed across the galaxy. Earth had been rebuilt, stronger and more beautiful than before. The cities gleamed with new architecture that blended human and alien designs. Memorial parks honored the 2 billion dead, ensuring their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Sang-hee taught at the Seoul Defense Academy, training the next generation of soldiers and peacekeepers. Her students came from dozens of species, all learning human tactics and determination. Bo-ra headed the United Earth Space Agency, developing new technologies that combined the best ideas from multiple species. Her hybrid ships explored the galaxy, discovering new worlds and making peaceful contact with other civilizations. Minji ran the galaxy's most advanced communications network, connecting species across hundreds of light-years. The teenager who had hidden messages in radiation patterns now facilitated instant communication between worlds. Su Min led the Galactic Medical Corps, bringing advanced healthcare to planets that had suffered under Valkyrie rule. She had saved far more lives after the war than were lost during it. In a bar on Mars Station, Admiral Daejung sat with Captain Hae-won and Commander Jin-ho. They were joined by veterans from a dozen species, all sharing stories and drinks. An old Valkyrie warrior sat with them, one who had fought against humanity during the invasion. "I still don't understand," the Valkyrie said. "What made humans different? Why did you fight when every other species surrendered?" Jin-ho smiled and took a drink. "You conquered peaceful species. Species that solved their problems through diplomacy and cooperation. They never developed the weapons or tactics needed for real war. But humans?" Hae-won continued. "We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years. Wars, revolutions, struggles over every piece of land. We know violence. We understand it. You gave us a common enemy, and suddenly all those thousands of years of military experience focused on you." The Valkyrie warrior nodded slowly. "We thought your lack of unity was weakness. We didn't realize you were simply waiting for a worthy opponent." "Worthy?" Daejung laughed. "You weren't worthy. You attacked civilians. You destroyed colonies. You tried to enslave us. You were a threat that needed to be eliminated, and humanity has survived every threat it's ever faced." He raised his glass. "To those we've lost, to those who fought, and to the future we've built together." Around the bar, humans and aliens raised their glasses and drank. The war was over. The galaxy was at peace. And everyone had learned the most important lesson: never underestimate humanity. The galaxy had never expected humanity to strike back, but they had learned. Quickly and painfully, they had learned.